Hola, and welcome to episode 4 of Foggy with a Chance of Seagulls. I'm Evan, and I'm joined by my friend Clark. If you are just joining us for the first time, we're going to talk some Giants baseball. And if you've already listened to the first few episodes, well, that's not a surprise to you at all. And if you're a fan of Giants baseball, you will notice that this week there's not a lot of Giants baseball. This past week, we are recording on Wednesday, right after the All-Star game, but they're taking a little break. Baseball starts again on Friday, so we wanted to talk a few things, namely the All-Star game. Clark, did you watch this year?
I did. Shout out to another high school friend. We're going to make this a recurring bit at this point, but another high school friend of
Really
ours,
fun for all the
Michael.
listeners.
Yeah, for those few people who get shouted out, they're having a good time. But yeah, my buddy Michael and his family hosted an all-star game party, and yeah, it was fun. A couple Giants pitched well, so that was especially fun. But I think the game is at a really fun place and got some really fun talent. And the All-Star game revealed that, like Elias Diaz, star of the game, Rockies catcher that everyone is very familiar with, obviously, was the MVP and had a great game. But no, it was fun. I had a good time. Did you watch?
I did not watch, and I kind of regretted it afterwards. I think that like there's been this kind of movement of fans against All-Star games in general in the past few years across different sports. I don't know if you agree with that, but I think there's a sentiment amongst commenters online that like All-Star games are a waste of time. Why do they even do them? And then I watched the highlights today and I said, "Dang, what a good game. I really should have watched." Like um I think that there's some All-Star games looking at you, the NBA, that are a complete waste of time. But the baseball one I thought was really good. I feel like they besides the horrific um the NL jerseys, I think, with the navy
Oh my god,
top
they're
and the black pants.
awful.
Awful stuff. Let them wear their uniforms again with a patch of AL and NL. I don't get it. But
Yeah.
besides that, I really feel like the MLB All Star Game does a great job at like featuring people, exposing people around any fans of baseball to players they wouldn't know otherwise, and I think really letting them into their stories in a cool way. And it was nice to see the NL get a win for the first time in forever. I think that's part of what made me disinterested for many years. Is like, okay, we're just
Yeah.
gonna watch the AL cream the NL once again. Phrasing, but it was fun, and I'm particularly proud of the Giants players that showed up. I think Camilo blowing away Julio Rodriguez, the young phenom for
That
the
was
Seattle
sick.
Mariners hometown team, was amazing. Cobb pitched well as well. And it's cool to see those guys on the big stage. And I know we had like a little closer moment last week, but if you're not already subscribed to The Athletic, another reason to do so, as my mom forwarded me this article, is that I think the New York Times is stopping all their sports writing and they're moving everybody to The Athletic. And so it's a good time to subscribe and read, because if you're kind of a casual fan of the Giants, I think the quality of writing is so high. And Andrew Baggerly, one of the longtime beat writers for the Giants, did
And
a
then our
piece.
favorite, Grant Brisbee.
Grant
But yeah.
Brisbee, definitely our favorite, but Bags has more access to the players, which is cool
Hmm.
because he's really able to craft these stories and a look into their lives in a really cool way. And it just talking about, Camilo was raised in this like farming town, kind of like very quiet vibes. They eat like farm to table, and just like, for when he would exercise as a kid, he would just go swim in the river, help out with stuff on the farm. He'd always like exercise outside. You never find him in a gym. And it just like, it explains a lot about how he's been able to get to this point and be literal all-star. So good for him. And yeah, it was a good time. I wish I'd seen it.
Yeah. And I think even more incredible too is the home run derby as a showcase
Mm,
for the talent in the MLB. And I think you mentioned the NBA. It's really hard in the other professional sports to do an all-star game that looks like a real game because guys don't
mm,
want to get hurt. Like the NFL, you're never going to have full-on tackling anymore because guys don't it's always been Hawaii. You know, they're not trying to play in the middle of winter, hitting each other as hard as they can for fun. NBA, the energy level is a little bit lower too, and I think that's natural because you have to be, you know, running so much, shuffling back and forth on defense, all of that so intensely in a regular season game. But in baseball, it's a little bit more casual just as a default of the sport, and there's so many more of the games, and you get more of a showcase both in the All Star game but also in the Home Run Derby. So um, I think, yeah, baseball needs to lean into it. And another piece that you mentioned, I just want to echo, but like show the real jersey numbers rather than a hat that blends into all the other ones. And the NL West really showed out. It wasn't just the Giants. Obviously, I mentioned Elias Diaz from the Rockies got the MVP, but at one point it was like Will Smith, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and Geraldo Perdomo all back to back in the lineup. And a couple other NL West guys sprinkled in. Obviously, the Dodgers had some guys. So, yeah, it was a cool it was a cool All Star game in terms of just showcasing talent. Seattle was a very good host city for it. Shouts to
Yeah.
Seattle. I thought they really brought it with like energy and being into it. And I don't know, the last moment reminded me a lot of the WBC this year where Shohei struck out Trout. It was like Kimbrel struck out Kyle Tucker, I want to say. No, he took a walk. Jose
Ramirez.
Ramirez? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and that's like a moment. Like it it's so cool to have games come down to like mano a mano closers. I was a little bummed that Thompson went with Kimbrel, like his dude, even though
yeah.
Kimbrel is by no means the best closer in the National League. It's like
Definitely not.
I don't know. That bugged me a little bit, but at least Camilo got the win.
Yeah.
And now the Giants are staking a claim to being the winning pitchers when the NL wins the All Star game. So that's a fun little stat for us
Yeah.
to bring
Well,
home.
they really plastered it all over social media. But if you didn't
They
already see,
did.
Camilo's the first winning NL pitcher since 2012, that All Star game, and Clark and I talked about it a bit before, but that's a game that featured Pablo Sandoval, Melky Cabrera, somebody else too,
Buster.
um, Buster, Matt Cain, and like, I mean, that's a weird one because Melky won the MVP. I seem to remember. Um,
Well, Melky in general, obviously, well, I don't know if this is obvious for everyone listening, but Melky Cabrera was on the Giants just for the 2012 season, was the best player in baseball that whole year. In August, got busted for PEDs and basically was never the same in baseball ever again. But the Giants benefited from that in the first half.
yeah,
And the NL, which was the Giants ultimately, the NL benefited from it because at the time the winner of the All Star game determined home field advantage. The Giants had the winning pitcher, they had the MVP, and then we won the World Series. And
and
Melky was a
back
huge
then,
part of the early part. Yeah.
you could literally stuff the ballot boxes, which Giants fans
Oh my
did.
God.
Like at the park, now they have online voting stuff, which is like good for the earth or whatever. But it was fun to go to a game and you would punch out the holes on who you thought
Oh,
should be an all star.
so
It's
much
just like
better, so much more
so
fun.
much better, so much more fun, and let us get way more Giants into the game
Mm-hmm.
because we had sellout crowds just like stuff in the
I
ballot
don't
box, like
vote
I said.
nearly as often as I used to with the like at the ballpark. Yeah, it was.
If you're
I get
making me
why, but
enter
it's a
like
bummer.
C capital HX34YZ, it's like I'm not gonna do it. And they make you do that like 10 times if you want to vote 10 times. And it's just like that's
Yeah.
not fun. But I wanted to say one more thing about the All-Star game before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that there's like a picture of Alex Cobb, our starting pitcher who used to be on the Angels, so former teammate of
Oh,
Shohei Ohtani, talking to Ohtani. And I just want to read this quote out, which is, you know, shout out to Clark's dad. He said he didn't want to be a Dennis Downer, but on one of our previous episodes, he said there's no way the Giants get Otani. And, I'm inclined to believe that, but also I'm going to keep dreaming. And it doesn't help when Alex Cobb says, I'd be thrilled if there was some avenue for us to get him at the deadline and sign him long term during this offseason. He's coming to San Francisco, which is a crazily confident take from him. But I love the energy. And if let's keep beating that drum, I say.
I love it. Well, Shohei is one half of a pitcher, and we have changed pitchers' careers here. So Cobb can speak to that, but we'll table that discussion for many episodes in the future.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next thing we wanted to talk about, and that happened during All Star week. In other sports, it's like All Star weekend, but randomly the baseball does it Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday because they don't
Baseball's
want
hard.
anyone to watch their things. But yeah, the MLB draft was this week. Not a star-studded affair like the NBA or NFL draft, but yeah, the Giants did some exciting things. Yeah,
Well, speaking
Evan,
of Shohei Ohtani, I mean, and two-way players, I think that's kind of a new. That's I'm not going to call it a theme for the Giants front office, but this is the second year in a row that we're drafting a two-way player with our first round pick. Last year it was what's his first name? It's Crawford.
Reggie
Something
Crawford, who's in
Reggie
San
Crawford.
Jose. Yeah, he's been doing really well in San Jose too. Pitches like 2 innings every 5 days, and hits one day out of the week as well.
Yeah.
But lefty has insane power. And from what I hear, is like a great dude too. And so
Yeah.
this year, yeah, we took who'd we take again? What was
Bryce Eldridge,
Bryce?
who's
Yeah,
a
Bryce
right-handed
Eldridge.
pitcher, excuse me, outfielder and first baseman from Virginia, and
He's 6'7" as an 18-year-old.
which is insane. He can throw mid 90s, can touch high 90s, and can
Mm-hmm.
really has a lot of power. I think the reports are saying that he's gonna probably more have a path to stick as a hitter than a pitcher, which is interesting considering kind of one of the big marks against him in some people's eyes is his frame and how big it is. And when you're a tall dude like an Aaron Judge is like the only comp that's coming to mind is like you just have a lot more strike zone to fill, and if
Yeah.
you're a power guy, that can leave a lot of gaps. So, but I'm really I mean, he just seems like I think the thing with the two-way players, like it's cool and it's fun, and like if we can get a in addition to Otani, if we can get a few more two-way players into the roster, I think that's awesome. But I think my read on it of what the front office is doing is prioritizing athleticism. And I think that being a two-way player implies that you really take your conditioning seriously, you take your rest seriously and recovery seriously. And Eldridge seems like a guy who really is passionate about the game. I mean, you have to be passionate about the game to want to do both things. It's tiring on your body. There's a reason not a lot of people do it or that it doesn't stick in the majors. So I
Not
think it's
even
an
talking
exciting
about
first
the
pick.
people who can't do it, like so
Yeah,
many people
exactly.
can't even do it. And then from the people who can do it, so few would even want to. So yeah, just backing up your point on that.
Yeah, and it's always interesting looking at the names from a draft because it's kind of like there's an element of, to be honest, historically, like my eyes glaze over. I'm like, okay, Walker Martin at shortstop in round two sounds great. Love to see it. But thankfully we do have. I'm speaking really loudly, and I'll cut that out. But I we there's some really good writers who focus on the minor leagues and the minor league system for the
Yeah,
Giants.
my
Something
guy
I didn't
Roger
realize.
Munter.
Roger Munter, Clark nicely gifted me a subscription, but his blog There Are Giants is really good. Melissa Lockhart, who writes for The Athletic, is really good. And I think to the casual fan, that may seem like something you might not want to engage in, but I think that there is something fun about being able to dream on guys like in this way. Like I think as soon as players enter a minor league system, I think expectations become a huge part of it. And then there's like, when are you going to help the major league team? But I think really thinking about like who players are and how they can develop and what their arc is as players is interesting to me. So, yeah, I feel something I wanted to mention too is um, I was reading that so a couple years ago, I think, is when they like reduced the minor league amount of minor league teams
Yeah.
that major league franchises have, and I think it
And
went
I
from
believe
eight
they
to
capped the
six.
number that I think they capped the number of players in your organization as well. Like 160
Oh,
and it used to be
interesting.
180, something like that. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, so most organizations have gone down from eight to six. And what I thought was interesting is the last two teams with eight in the majors are the D-backs and the Giants. And
Yep.
I think that really speaks to, and I think that's what's getting me, like, these names, I'd love to go through a few of them too. But I think what's getting me excited more about these drafts in general is the feeling that they're really thinking about what paths these guys are going to take to the majors, because now the draft itself is shorter as well. I think there's like
Mm-hmm.
much less rounds than it used to be in 2020. They
It's
shortened it to
half.
five.
It's
Yeah, and
20
that's a
rounds now. It
lot
used to be
less.
in the 40s. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. It's like you a guy like Ryan Walker on our major league roster. A couple of people have noted that he's probably going to be one of the last, like, what is it, like 31st rounders or something like
Yep.
that. That just doesn't exist anymore because it's just only 20 now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And but I don't know, but like, because there's only 20 rounds, and just knowing the way how methodical this front office is, it feels like there's a real plan for every player on how to maximize their strengths and get them where they want to go. And obviously, like, there's a big element of you take big swings and you get big misses in the draft. Like, that's just inherently part of it. I think after the first few rounds, even the first round, it like becomes a real toss up whether these guys make the majors or not. But I think seeing the guys that are coming down the pipeline for us that have been drafted under Farhan, under Kapler, really, I think too, it makes it easier to dream on guys and get excited.
I agree. And it was fun to read some of the analysis afterwards from like um, national media. Jim Callis of, I think, MLB.com, or I can't remember where he writes for, but he rated the Giants draft class as the number 2 draft class, which ultimately doesn't mean anything. But a lot of people projected our first 3 round picks to all go in the first round. And we
Wow.
got incredible value. Some of it was relationship building. What was our shortstop name that we drafted in the second round? You
Wade
mentioned,
Martin, Walker Martin.
yeah, Walker Martin. He apparently had kind of told teams he was going to go to college because he's a high school shortstop. He's going to go to college unless the Giants took him. So all these
Wow.
teams after the Giants pick were like, all right, well, we're going to waste a pick if he doesn't come to us. But the Giants had been scouting him for a long time and had really developed a relationship and kind of sold a kid on not only just like, hey, we'll give you money to play baseball, but here's how we're going to utilize you. Here's our plan for
Mm.
you. This is what we see in you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be developed not only, and this gets, I think, a bit deeper than we need to right now, but like even just developed as a person. And I think these organizations that, like you said, the Giants and Diamondbacks, who have such an emphasis on, our development leagues, which are the Rookie Ball League in Arizona and then the Dominican Summer League down in the DR. We have 2 teams. The Diamondbacks have 2 teams in each, and I think every other organization just has 1 team. So that's another roster of guys who are developing, and you're giving opportunities to, and you're paving the way for them to show you something. If they were a prospect, you're talking Ryan Walker. If you're a prospect who's drafted in the 31st round, you have more of an opportunity to show the front office that you can play baseball, that you may have been overlooked elsewhere and through the draft process, but you're passionate about achieving your dream. So I think it's
Yeah.
really exciting, and a theme you and I have kind of started talking about throughout the show is how impressed we are top to bottom of this organization, and how we're finally starting to see the seeds that were planted in 2019, 2020. And now we're seeing also, and I think we're trying to highlight the like planting of those seeds for 2026, 2027,
Yeah.
2028. And hopefully, you and I are still talking and recording us talking about Giants baseball, and we'll go, hey, look at one of our first episodes. We talked about Walker Martin and Bryce Eldridge, and or maybe we should shout out some names later in the draft just so he can get credit for it when they eventually become Ryan Walker types. But no, I think it's just the exciting part about following baseball and is very unique to the sport of baseball. And we have a great organization.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to actually, um, just so that we can get that extra credit, maybe we can rank like our top five names from the draft together. Because I think that's one of the beauties of baseball drafts is like how you just are like, where do these names come from? It's like, people in Illinois with nothing better to do. I will say this year's are a little bit um more pedestrian, but there's a few good ones. And do any of them jump out to you as maybe
There,
our number five pick?
yeah, there is one that I cannot pronounce, and it starts with an S. There's a Z and a Y in it. Um,
Oh,
I'm not even gonna try, but
Charlie Sikowney.
I'm impressed with your attempt. He is going to be a Giants legend only because I can only imagine how fun it would be to hear my dad try to say his last name. So he
There's
must
no
be
way.
a Giants legend. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I let's. He's in the 5 spot.
yeah. In the
Who
five
stands
spot, I
out to
think
you? Give me the 4
with
spot.
number four, I just love the way that Dylan Carmouche rolls off the tongue. It doesn't particularly sound like a baseball player to me, but that's why I like it, and I'm going with that.
I really like Dylan Carmouche. It's a great pick. Um, my number 3 pick is Jack Payton because I could see him becoming a TV show, much like Jack Ryan or whatever, Jack Reacher, whatever. Jack Payton, CIA. And, if this
Well,
whole catching thing doesn't work, I think he's got a career elsewhere, just name alone.
I mean, Jack Payton CIA, he's a catcher in action. I don't know. It's just the script's kind of writing itself. It also feels like a name that, like, if you like pulled up a player in MLB The Show and just auto generated, it would definitely give
Yeah.
you Jack Payton. Like, that's like not even a real person's name. I really like that
Jack
one.
Payton, CIA, he's a catcher by day, but a CIA agent by night. And
Wow.
he's a platoon catcher, so he actually only plays day games.
And he's a platoon CIA guy because he can only do a certain type of mission. He's not good at all different types and can only
Yeah.
whatever. I'm gonna have to let this one go, and I think I'll move on to
Yep.
my next pick, which I think is gonna be. It's tough. I'm between Luke Schleiger and Maui Ahuna. Maui
Well,
Ahuna, a Hawaiian player,
sorry.
and Luke
Maui
Schleiger. His
Ahuna,
name's
go ahead.
which no. I think those are my one and two. So would love to hear
Yes.
how you place them.
I was I was saving Maui for one. I think unassailably, if he can, and he was our fourth round pick, shortstop. We've had a great track record with fourth round shortstops, as one Brandon Crawford was once upon a time a fourth round shortstop draft pick. Um, but yeah, he's Maui Ahuna from Hawaii. How is he not going to be a fan favorite if he's
Yeah,
even remotely decent? If he
yeah.
is a taxi squad guy, people will get jerseys of his, let alone if he locks down a starting role ever. So he is by far number one.
Yeah. Okay. I think Luke Schleiger. Shout outs to you. Don't be discouraged. I hope you have a long career in this league. I just kind of like it kind of reminded me of Liger from Napoleon Dynamite. Maybe is why I went for that. The lion and tiger combination. But Maui Huna is a name that you want the full thing across the back. So that's going to be my petition to the Giants clubhouse manager if he ever makes it to the majors. But I'm really satisfied
It's
with
still
these
shorter.
picks.
That's still shorter than Saltalamacchia. So,
Or Samarja.
or Samarja. Oh,
Did I
that
ever
was
tell you
right there.
about
I should have used that
I
one.
I I remember like at like a garage sale I picked up like High Heat Baseball 2003 or something like on CD-ROM, and because I didn't have video games really growing up, and so that was what I got, and I would play that, and there was like a couple names where like the audio file got corrupted or something, so I will always remember Jared Saltamacchia because I don't remember who the announcer was, but every time he'd come up to bat, it would go, Jared Saltamacchia. Yeah, and that stuck with me my whole life. Ultimately, a pretty forgettable major league player, but forever in my heart. Forever in my heart.
That is fantastic. Um, so draft was fun, but I do think both of us are excited for the Giants to get back on the field, see if they can, um, yeah, keep with their winning ways. So we're gonna finish up this episode by just kind of talking about some of our things that we're most looking forward to in this second half of the season and to finish out 2023. Evan, what's one thing you're looking forward to?
Well, I'm looking forward to. I think the thing. I mean, it's if you look around baseball, injuries are everywhere, always happening. This is an evergreen thing. But for our team, they really hit us hard, and I think that in the era of good feelings a couple weeks ago, we were like, this team is unstoppable. There's no holes in the roster, and then guys started going down like
Injury
flies a little bit.
gods, injury
Yeah,
gods had another idea.
exactly. And I think some guys are going to get some well needed rest. Um, there's and so I'm looking forward to that. I will say, I this it was nice to get a few wins against the Rockies for sure. Also, shout out Logan Webb for the absolute web
Ooh.
gem that my mother was there to see 7 innings of. But I think I'm I'm looking forward to see guys getting rest because I want to see who this team is. Because I think that
Yeah.
I'm kind of like caught between these two things. Like it's really easy to like put on those rose-colored glasses and then a couple things go wrong. Our offense is kind of slowed a little bit at the end of June. And so I'm interested to see who they are really.
I think that's a great point. I think it's a great first kind of expectation for the season or hope for this second half of the season. Um, to that point, I'm really curious to see what our rotation looks like. We
Mm.
have had a really interesting pitching season, and some of it, to your point, due to injury. But we have like 9 guys in either the major leagues or in AAA right now who could conceivably start or pitch like 3 to 5 innings. And then we have one Logan Webb who, like you said, was phenomenal on Sunday. And I'm expecting great things from him. He's had a really good year. I think he's run into some bad luck, but he's looked like his best self at different points of the season. But after that, Cobb was our all-star, and is very much, I think, in that number 2 spot. But from DeSclafani all the way to like Sean Jelly and maybe even Kyle Harrison, who we haven't even seen this year,
Yeah.
I'm super curious who ends up being the 5-man rotation, because I don't think they want to do nearly as many bullpen games, but they did it out of necessity because they didn't trust that many starters at any time. So
Yeah.
who
And
do you think ends up kind of showing out, I guess, is the big question of this second half. But what were you going
well,
to say?
what I'm hearing from the front office, aka
What I'm hearing on the ground?
what I'm hearing on podcasts and reading in articles, is that they expect Ross Stripling to be a really big part of this rotation in the second half. He's been injured and kind of forgotten about in the first half of the season, but we signed him to a multi-year deal, which is kind of easy to forget. But I think that they expect him to take a big role. Do I think he's going to take a big role? I'm not entirely convinced of that because I would love to see it, but I don't think he's ever been he's a solid 5, and we need that just as much as we need a 3 and a 4 as
But we
well.
have that.
But
Yeah.
but we have that
We
in
are in
spades, and so
abundance. Yeah.
yeah. So I think they had talked about before the season that he made some mechanical changes that kind of had unlocked some stuff for him. So I'm excited to see that play out. I think we're at an interesting position in terms of like who it's going to be, because it's like, who are those people? Is it going to be people stepping up? Is it going to be through trades? Is it going to be through people that we call up from the minors? There's kind of reasons for and against all of those. Like, I think we have, the Manayas and Jellies and Keaton Wins and Becks and all those people, because they're all kind of in a similar genre. And so for one of them to rise out of that, it's really going to have to take um, a couple consistent, really solid performances of going multiple innings and showing that their stuff plays multiple times through the order. Um,
My big hot take for the second half concerning the pitching staff is I think Keaton Wynn becomes one of our five. I
mm,
was really impressed with a couple of his starts at the end of the first half. Um, but he just has. It's funny because we were in Toronto and he had his best start of the season. Um,
yeah.
but he reminds me a lot of Gossman. He is throwing that
Mm,
fastball top of the zone, a splitter that is nasty either in the zone or out of the zone, and to be able to fool big league hitters that consistently with a pitch in the zone can be. I mean, that's really impressive. So I'm excited to see if he gets a little bit more leash. I don't think the fact that he's in AAA means that the Giants are soured on him. I think it's more just a roster issue with Stripling, Mania back. You know, we have a lot of guys who are veterans who, unless they're hurt, have to be on the main roster. So yeah, I think Keaton Wynn is a guy I'm looking at.
yeah, I'd love to see that. I mean, obviously, and we've mentioned this before on the pod, but I'd love to see Kyle Harrison be a big part of this team. I'm. It's not. I think it's not a fait accompli yet. I think obviously he's injured currently, and so that sets things back a little bit. And
Yeah.
he's still not consistently finding the strike zone. And just because he has a high draft pedigree doesn't mean that he's gonna be able to contribute this year. I think he's obviously a long term contributor for this team. Whether it's this year in a meaningful way, I don't know, but I'd love to see it too. And then I think too, just to like talk about trades as well. Um, it's like I don't know. I kind of go back and forth on like Stroman or like the pitcher from the Cubs or Lucas Giolito from the White Sox are like maybe the top options on the trade market right now, and I don't
Yeah.
know
They're
if
not
those guys are
super
worth
appealing.
giving up a lot for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what has to be acknowledged with trades too is like a lot of the times it doesn't work. They move to a different city and it just doesn't. They're throwing to different catchers. They're living out of their suitcase. It's not feeling settled. And, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And often I
Mm-hmm.
think the trades that end up making a bigger difference are like targeting like B tier, C tier guys and like seeing something in them that you can bring out rather than hoping that an all-star caliber pitcher is going to continue being just as much an all-star for you. Sometimes it works that way and sometimes it really doesn't. So I'll be interested to see how they deal with that. And I think too, um, how we play up until the trade deadline, I think makes a difference
Yeah.
as well. Like
I think
this is
so too.
obviously a competitive team, and I think that the front office views it as such. But it's the Dodgers started heating up again. The Diamondbacks faltered a little bit lately, but they still, they're sharing the lead with the Dodgers and the Padres. Like all it takes is like something to click, and they can go on a run. So we're in a tough division, one of the tougher ones
Yep.
right now.
Thank God for
So
the expanded playoffs. I'm so glad I don't have to worry about our division because
yeah,
ultimately three teams from or all four of those teams could make the playoffs conceivably. I don't
yeah,
think it will happen, but so it's just about getting better. It's not about beating certain teams, which I think is easier. Um, I would be surprised ultimately if we did a big move at the deadline. I just don't
yeah,
see the market for it, and I don't see us trading anything substantial from our minor leagues just to try to win this year when we've shown that these young guys are the most important part of our team moving forward. And having Luciano um, and Kyle Harrison, who you mentioned, being our top two prospects, both in the upper minors, Luciano in Double A, who's starting to really heat up, and
yeah,
Kyle Harrison, who is going through some struggles in Triple A, but he's 21, so
yeah.
um, he's got a bright future. We're not going to trade any of those guys just for a 1 year rental when I think also the Braves are really really good this year, and if we traded for a guy, would that put us over the edge against the Braves? I don't think any more considerably than the chance we have currently. Like, we've seen it
Yeah.
in the playoffs before too. You can just get hot at the right time. It's not about the trade you make at the deadline, unless it's Marco
Yeah.
Scutaro, of course. Um, but yeah,
But
I just don't see us doing that much.
I hear what you're saying. I think that um I think that though in the playoffs, like starting pitching becomes more important than it is in the regular season because I think I think teams like when you do a TBD and then you throw out Ryan Walker and then Mania and follow him with Junis and whatever, like that can work
Yeah,
during the regular season because like teams just like it's 162 games and like teams don't have time to prep and adjust for that necessarily. But I think in the playoffs it's kind of like I don't know, like you kind of like you need to have guys that can beat the other team without any like gimmickry or trickery. Just go out there and throw the ball hard and blow them away. And like that's kind of what you need in the playoffs. So I think I think that they'll be keeping an eye on the starting pitching market, and I think that they'll be thinking about the middle infield too, because losing Tyro is a big blow to this team. He's one of the best players on the team this year, and we've had some guys go on hot streaks, but there's a lot of inconsistency in this lineup a little bit currently, and so
yeah.
I'll be interested to see what we do, but I don't think that I think that I don't think that they felt that this was a mistake, but I think that we've made some deals at the deadline in the past few years that like probably Farhan wouldn't make again. Like the Chris Bryant of it all, or
I disagree with that one actually. I don't
really.
think we got burned on that Chris Bryant deal. I don't think they ever really looked at that as being a long-term play, and it
Mm-hmm.
was owing it to Buster to go for a run. I think they absolutely knew that was Buster's last year. Um so but
Mea culpa.
neither of
I
us
stand
really know.
corrected.
No, neither of us really know.
No, 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 no,
But
no. I
I don't
think you're
think that
right.
was a bad deal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
totally.
I also
I just
don't
think
think we have the same urgency this year, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like it's
I just
context dependent.
right. Exactly. I mean, like it's funny because like if the team is doing really well, then it like justifies going for it a little bit more. But if they're not doing as well, is like when they need the
Hmm.
help. So it's just like because I think that there's talent on this roster enough to be able to compete in the postseason. But it's gonna be like you said, the Braves are gonna be tough. But it ultimately like you know, the Braves have not won every year. They've been great for years now, and they
Same with the
they don't win the
Dodgers.
World
I
Series
mean,
every year. Same with the Dodgers, yeah.
yeah.
Same with the Rays. Like it's just like it's being great in the regular season does not guarantee postseason success.
Yep.
Like it just
Just got to
doesn't.
get to the dance. And I
Exactly.
think we're on our way. But going back to the middle infield point that you made, I think it'll be interesting to see if Schmidt and Wisely, who are kind of
Mm,
platooning at second base right now, if that becomes even passable offensively, the two of
mm,
them are just as good defensively as Tyro. And what this season has really shown is the difference that just having average and above average defenders has compared to
yeah.
last year's absolute atrocity in the field on so many bases. I mean, last episode I talked about it, but I went to the game on Wednesday and Schmidt had 4 plays at second base that were like an average second baseman doesn't do that. They can't make that
Yeah.
play. And that is his third best position. He is an elite third baseman. He's been phenomenal at shortstop and been really good at second. So if he's batting 230 and barely walking, like he's still so valuable even with Tyro out. And I don't think we can find necessarily a replacement for that either. Um,
No.
but when Tyro comes back, obviously it'll be nice to have a borderline all-star batting in that spot now. But
Yeah.
we need a little bit more from Conforto, I think. Jock has been really solid all year, but every year he goes on a bananas hot streak where he hits everything out of the ballpark for like a week. And Yaz has been really good this year. I think we We'll have to, unfortunately, because of roster decisions, trust our guys. But I think there's reason to believe in trusting our guys at the same time.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting position because it's I think this team is going to kind of go as the young guys go. Like I think it's important to get Conforto and Peterson and Haniger back in the fold and whatnot. But I think this team just looks very different with Bailey, Schmidt, and Matos producing offensively, and like
Right up the
they're all
middle
so
too.
good.
Yeah,
Exactly. And they're so good defensively that like they can stick on the roster without helping out on the offensive side, but it's I think that's why we were dreaming so hard on this team a few weeks ago when they were rolling is because all those guys were hitting the ball, and I think that it's now a real test of this player development at the major league level thing that Kapler kind of has championed and Farhan has
hmm
tried to build. And because like we've talked about before, we've seen guys come up and destroy the ball for a couple weeks and then they just don't stick around and then they become these 4A players, or like they're kind of bouncing between the triples, between the triples, between
no
AAA
offense
and
to
the
him,
majors.
no
Yeah, no
offense to
offense
him,
to
but
him.
The Mac
Ye-
Williamsons of the world.
Exactly. And I feel like there's been so many guys we've been excited for like that. But being a major leaguer is hard because now there's more data than ever about it's like, okay, there's a couple weeks where they don't know you, they don't have the scouting report down, but then just a few games in and they have enough data to be like, we can throw you the ball right here. We'll put our guy
Yeah,
right here where you're going to hit the ball. And it's really hard to adjust to that.
it
And
is.
I think that it is up to the staff and those players, I think the young players, to to decide that they want to make those adjustments that they've never had to make in their career to this point. Like, you have to make adjustments throughout the minors to go to escalate, but it's not the same as when you reach the majors and guys are throwing 99, 100, 101 consistently and locating it with cut action on it. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it really is about that. So I think, yeah, I think the season goes as the young guys go. I love these young guys, and so I really hope that they show up. But
and I
and I
think
think
that's
that
super exciting to follow. I
yeah,
mean, yeah, we're just
exactly.
lucky to be able to cheer for these guys, to watch their development in real time. And if the season doesn't end up resulting in a playoff berth, we will have watched these guys get better this year, and it will only help our team in the future. So it's kind of a win-win second half. It's either we fall out of the race, but we get to watch Bailey, Matos, maybe even Harrison down the line, Schmidt, obviously, really develop and solidify themselves as giants, or they lead the charge on us making the playoffs and maybe having a little fun later this year. So
Yeah,
it's
and
exciting either way for me.
you mentioned it earlier, but is Luciano going to come up and contribute this year? Is Heliot Ramos going to finally show up at the major league level? I think that would make a big difference if they could. So
Elliot
and the
Ramos, low key, just won AAA Player of the Week in the Pacific Coast League, and is coming off the 60-day IL in a week, I believe, the 13th. So a week from tomorrow, or sorry, the 20th, which is a week from tomorrow. I think he comes off the IL. So he's been crushing lefties, especially in AAA, and with Haniger hurt, we're in need of that. So um,
yeah, and next man up. Like
next
that's
man up.
I think that's the main thing I'm looking forward to in the second half of the season is I don't need I mean not that it matters what I need to see, but I'm not craving like you immediately have to be an all-star in the second half of the season. It's just like show the ability. I'm excited to see the young guys hopefully show the ability to adjust and show that they belong at this level long term, because these are three guys I'd love to see be foundational pieces for the next continuous title contender. So that's what I love to see.
I
But
agree.
I'm a I think this has been a fun season so far, and like obviously that's why we started this podcast, and I'm excited to talk about it more. And I think there's some real interesting storylines to follow, and I'm
I
feeling
totally agree.
pretty good about where we are with today's episode. Do you feel the same? Um,
Absolutely. And I just want to add a little note if you're listening to this, and um, please comment, hit us up on social media, DM us on Instagram for what you're excited about this year. I'm genuinely interested in what people are excited for because I think, like we've laid out, there are reasons to be excited. There are more people attending games in person. So, yeah, I'm stoked to see what's next. This is going to be a brutal road trip to start, but I think we got it. I think we have it in us to do well here. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
So yeah, what we'll do is if you are watching this on YouTube, I think I mentioned this last week, but I made much more of an effort to like put in some video stuff on YouTube, make it more compelling than just like watching our stupid faces for 45 minutes. But if you're watching on YouTube, please do leave a comment. On Spotify as well, if you listen there, I'll leave a little poll Q&A thing. I've never tried that, but I'll do it this week, and feel free to answer. Feel free to DM
fancy.
us, and it's just want to reiterate. I will stop talking about this, but every week it's cool to hear people reach out about the show. Like, I know that it's like, we're not doing crazy numbers with this, but if you're listening to this, we really appreciate it. I mean, it's just our ramblings on stuff, but it's meant a lot to us, and we're having fun doing it. So, yeah, I think that takes us to the end of this week's episode. Excited for this second half to get started, and go Giants, and we'll catch you next week.
Have a good one.